Do you ever see one of those Instagram profiles or food blogs that are exquisitely styled with gorgeous colors and recipes? Do you ever wonder what goes into that and how much time it requires to develop a body of work around food, social media, and blogging? In this episode, I talk with Chef Laura Wright about what it takes to create her food blog that showcases seasonal vegan recipes with beautiful photographs and captivating stories. We talk about how she grew her business, blog, and social media community over the last 10 years and her process of creating her visually stunning cookbook, The First Mess. We cover her inspiration for creating new recipes, her favorite flavors, and her advice to food bloggers, as well as how her business taught her to love and nourish herself. Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. Welcome to the Flowerlounge Podcast. This week I have with me Laura Wright from The First Mess, who is at thefirstmess.com, and she's also on Instagram. And you may be hearing some dog noises, right?
Yes, just warning people.
Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to do this podcast with you.
What kind of dogs do you have?
They're both mixed breed rescues. Their names are Mickey and Cleo. And Cleo is a Jack Russell and Hound cross. And Mickey is a Chihuahua and Whippet cross. We think.
Fast.
Yeah. Well, Mickey is a little racer. Yeah, she's so quick.
Yeah, Taylor mentioned to me earlier that one of your dogs was ill and you were giving it self-heal. Which one was it?
It was Mickey. She caught a virus that's transferable through other animals, even animals like skunks or raccoons. And it really kind of took her immunity down. It kind of hindered her liver function for a bit. So she was hospitalized for about a week.
Aww.
And her digestion is not totally there yet just because she was on so much medicine. And it did kind of compromise some of her ability to digest. Like, it's very temporary. But in the meantime, we are giving her self-heal in her water. And yeah, just doing everything we can for her. She's my little baby. So
It must have been so hard when she was away for a week.
It was difficult. There's a big teaching animal hospital in Ontario. It's about an hour from where we live, thankfully. Like, we didn't have to go much further. It was actually a huge blessing because we could just go see her and it wasn't too much of a big deal. I didn't have to plan a whole day around it or anything like that. So we did get to see her pretty much every day while she was there. So
awesome. Yeah, so we could talk about so many things today. I was really most interested in talking about business.
Wow, yeah, totally. Into that, yeah.
Okay, just because you have a ton of followers on Instagram, and I know like how much work that is.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. And you're super prolific with cooking plant-based food. Do you want to just like talk a little bit about how you got started and just sort of like the trajectory of your blog?
Yeah, sure. I mostly started my cooking blog because I was honestly a bit bored at the time. I had been to culinary school. It was a nutritional program. I had worked in restaurants for a long time too. I always liked cooking. And especially when I turned vegan, I just loved cooking even more. I was just so curious and how it was just a totally new way to cook. It was so inspiring to me. And after I got out of culinary school, I was working in a restaurant that was not super busy. It was actually dead. I was getting called off of shifts all the time. And at the time, my friend, who would frequently ask me cooking questions and things like that, and every time she asked me a question, she would say, this would be useful in a blog situation because people have questions like this and people are making these food blogs and they're really helpful. And finally, she said it to me enough times. I was like, okay, I'll just start it because I'm not super busy with work. I'll just start it. I'll take the photos. We'll just see how this goes. This was almost 10 years ago. And now it's here. I mean, it's not like it happened by accident, but I kind of just kept posting to it regularly. I love to cook. I cook all the time. I never cook the same thing twice. I'm just always making something. And I garden a lot. I do vegetable gardening. So I always have a lot of stuff that I'm working with. And yeah, it just kind of kept, at the time when I started the blog, I was also working in a restaurant. And I transitioned to another restaurant that was busier. And like my time was like half my blog, half the restaurant. And then slowly those halves became like a 2/3 and then a 3/4 and then 100% just recipe development and content creation. And I published a cookbook, and that kind of really accelerated the 100% food business, like making my own food content kind of thing. I kind of didn't have a choice. I had to like go all in at that point.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much. But yeah, I just kept going and going and building momentum. And I feel like I just kind of started Instagram at the right time when it was like, I know people talk about the algorithm aspect of Instagram all the time. Like I don't like to give it much power, but when I started, that was not a factor. Like people would just see your post no matter what. So it was like a lot easier to get followers and people like kind of clicking over to your website and things like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's changed so much, but it's still a very powerful tool. Like it's just such a large portion of my audience is on there.
Early days of Instagram. Right?
I know, it was so different. I could just post a picture of, like, we only had one dog when Instagram started. I could post a picture of my dog and like everyone would like it. And now, like, I would say 200 people unfollow me if I post a picture of my dog. It's just changed so much.
Really?
Yeah. People unfollow me if I post pictures of my dogs. It's so strange.
That's strange. At least you have those 200 people like seeing your posts. That's like a lot of, some people's complaints are like, oh, the algorithm changing, like the people seeing my stuff is so much less.
I know. I think about that change with Instagram a lot, but I also, like I said before, like I don't like to give it too much power. I read this somewhere, but it was just like, if what you're doing isn't being seen by your audience, just like try something new without a feeling of risk. Like you have nothing to lose at that point. And like, I mean, I guess I have something to lose, but that's just how I act now. I kind of just post whatever. I'm not super in my head about it. For a while I kind of was, but now I'm just like, if they don't like it, it's fine. And it seems to be working for me. Like, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say what's really working on Instagram, really. But yeah, I don't know. I don't care. I don't give it as much power or headspace anymore. And I enjoy making the content so much more.
So how long was you went through your trajectory of like straddling two things at once? And then, how long was that total time period until you like fully went by yourself?
I only stopped working at a restaurant and doing freelance food photography work for a couple of magazines. I only stopped doing that like right when I finished making my book. Like I think I handed in the final edits of my cookbook before it would go to get printed. And I put in my resignation at the restaurant like that week.
Because how many years was that?
Sorry. Your original question. Sorry. That was, okay. I think probably 6 years. I want to say 6 years. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just but I'm the type of person who really I like the safety net. Like, I don't know, like there's a lot of, especially with like an online focused business, you just don't know where it's going to go, especially with like food blogging and stuff. Like for a while, people were talking about how everything was going to go to video. And like, I'm not a video person. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. That's kind of a threat to me. So for me, like having the restaurant safety net, like felt good, and it felt good for a while. But then I reached a point where I was just like, I don't need it. I'm fine. I'll be okay.
Yeah. So what were your challenges in the early days, and how are those different from your challenges today in terms of your business?
My challenges in the early days were definitely like having my work seen. Like that was a huge thing. It's just like, who's going to pick up my recipe and showcase it in whatever online roundup? Like it was just, things were so different. Like you couldn't just blast it onto Instagram. It was very like, you would hope that Huffington Post or some food magazine would pick it up and say, this is interesting. So being seen, certain like food photography challenges, like I was still very much learning how to use my camera. Like certain things I couldn't figure out, and certain ways of lighting food with only natural light. Like I was just still very much learning that. And also separating like my time from my working time, because I do everything at my house. I don't have a studio or anything. So like I was very bad at separating those things, and I would just do the work at weird hours, and it was like not good for my health in a lot of ways. So that was a challenge back then. And now I would say my challenges are, I don't see them as challenges. Like, I don't know. It's like the thing I focus on, a challenge for me, I guess, is like trying to automate certain aspects of what I do so that I don't have to do everything until I get to a point where I feel comfortable that maybe I would bring in an assistant, or we would go to a studio environment and I would just start doing that and bring on other people. Like right now, it's just the biggest challenge, I guess, for me is figuring out how and when this can grow a certain way, which is a much bigger challenge than like learning how to use my camera. So.
Yeah. I notice you, I mean, it's in terms of growth, speaking of growth, on your About page, you had a ton of press.
Yes. That was from...
Organically, or did you reach out, or how did that happen?
I think it kind of happened more organically. Like, again, like in the early days of blogging, things were so different. And like a lot of my press did come from when my book came out, which was amazing. That was great. That's like my publisher reaching out to people in that case. And now it's, I don't know, the way like Instagram and like, I guess it's like a microblogging kind of thing has like seeped in, and like all the food magazines have their own separate Instagram account and they're creating all these different avenues of content. I feel like some of these food media, food press things that used to be very relevant in my world are less so, because these outlets are just creating their own version of it almost. So yeah, it's different. The landscape keeps changing, and I love that. I think it keeps you on your toes. It makes you think a bit differently.
It looks like from your website that you're doing about one like major post recipe photos a week, right?
Yes, I'm doing one a week, and then I'm launching, hopefully, fingers crossing, this week I am launching a newsletter where I'll have like just like a little recipe, like probably a beverage recipe or a sauce or something easy, quick, like most people can make it. And it'll be like a selection of, links or a book I'm reading or whatever. Or like, it would be like a link to this podcast interview just to direct people to other stuff I have going on.
So is it fair to say, like, just as a general estimate, just as a random estimate, because I'm a huge fan of like, putting in the work and like doing 10,000 hours of something and then begin to feel like you're sort of like discovering what it is, right? Because I mean, like I see like in the healing industry, so many like weekend courses for this. And then you come out after 2 days and you're that, right?
Right. Yes.
And then I look at like, the art of Japanese sword sharpening, and it's like generations and generations, and like family member passed on to family member. And then they like sharpen their entire lives.
Yes.
And then by the end of their life, as they're ready to die, they like still feel like they haven't mastered it,
Yes.
And so I'm curious about, like, could we say an estimate that you've done one big project per week for the last 10 years in terms of like cooking, photography?
Yeah. Recipe? Oh yeah, probably. Like every once in a while I'll take like a couple weeks off. I'll just be like, you know what I mean? Or when I was working on my book, that was different. But yeah, I think that's very safe to estimate. Yes.
How do you stay inspired and keep creating new things?
Just the season and like being in nature, which is, I think a lot of people feel that way as well. But like if I just see like this time of year, I go into my garden, like just my flower garden, not my vegetable one. And like my flowers are all like burgundy, green, white, and the leaves are turning orange. I'm like, wow, that would be so beautiful in a salad, like that color combination. Actually, the recipe I made this week, I just noticed today, it is orange, purple, green with white. Like it's just like, I don't know. It's just like nature communicates a certain like colorway. And I'm just like, I will find a way to eat that this week. Like that's powerful for me. Or even just like my other hobbies, like going to watch films, like those things inspire me in a lot of weird, not related kind of ways. Like things just hit me at weird times.
And how do you start with recipe creation? So like if I were to hand you a pile of ferns that I picked out of some jungle-y place in Taiwan, for example.
Okay.
Gave you a bunch of these like funky, like ribbony ferns. How would you approach trying to make a recipe or something interesting?
Right. I would definitely taste it raw, as long as it's safe to ingest raw. I would taste it raw, smell it, observe, the shape of it, how it falls on a plate. And then I have like a bunch of like, they're not cookbooks, but they're kind of like flavor map resources where like you can look up, like I have a wild foods one, I have a more typical foods one. And I could look up something in the fern family, probably not the precise thing you would give me, but I would look up something in that flavor family, see what their naturally suggested pairings are. Definitely research what else is growing at the same time in that region, that time of year, because generally the things that just pop up together, they naturally taste so good together. Like that's just how nature works. I think like tomatoes and basil, those are going out in my garden at the same time. That's a timeless example. So I would go to that. And then from there, I would just probably move to the cooking method. Like, do I want to steam this? Do I want to cook it over fire? Do I want to leave it raw and add like a really acidic component to partially quote unquote cook it? But yeah, like I just usually start, I have a few good resources that will talk about wild foods or natural food pairings, think about the season, and then I just move from there.
What are some of your favorite flavors to use?
Loving anything geared towards flavor. Really love sour. That's my favorite. But yeah, smoky, the sherry vinegar, super briny stuff like capers and olives I'm really into as well. And we just started getting our first squashes and sweet potatoes. So I'm really liking that like cozy sweet flavor with all of the briny, acidic, smoky stuff. It's a total flavor bomb. That's my favorite.
And do you mostly cook, like from what I've seen, you mostly cook savory, right? Do you you're not as focused on desserts or sweet things?
I'm more of a savory person just because of my background in working professionally cooking. Like I was always a savory cook. I like to just, it's better suited to improvisation and just doing things in the moment, which is the type of cook that I am. Baking is really prescriptive. Like I like baking bread because it's very like feeling based. Like you can see like, this is what my sourdough is doing today. Or like, what does the dough feel like? What happened because of the humidity? I like that. But to make a dessert or something, I'm not very patient. I also am not a big sweets person. Like I like, beautiful seasonal fruit. I love to eat like a date with some peanut butter on it or something. But that's generally, I love chocolate. I do. Yes. I love like a good few pieces of dark chocolate. That's good. But it's like, that's simplicity. That's what I like with sweetness. Like I'm not like a piece of cake with like ice cream or something. Like it's not my favorite thing. I'd rather have like a salty bag of potato chips if I'm having a treat. So yeah.
And can we talk a little bit about your book? Like how long it took to create, start from scratch? How did you get the book deal? Because you worked with Penguin, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah. So I had won some kind of award for my blog from Savory magazine, which was really cool. And then my editor who I worked with saw that, followed my blog for a while and just emailed me and said, I've worked with bloggers who turned into authors before. I would love to work with you. So I would just think about it all the time, what kind of book I would make, how that would go, what that process would even be like. And eventually I met with her again and she introduced me to my literary agent. And then we built a proposal for the book with like a proposed recipe list, all the stuff, the vibe of the book. And then we just had a book deal basically. And I spent a year making it in my house. And I photographed everything and developed everything. And I like got a bunch of like testers just to like make sure everything really worked. And so I submitted it after a year and then it was edited and then it came out like another year later. So it takes about 2 years total for it all to like from signing to actually publishing.
Yeah. I wrote a book called Flower Revolution and published by Hay House. So the same process, like 1 year of creation and 1 year of editing and imagery, and then it finally comes out. By the time it comes out, you're like, oh my God, that's such an old story.
Yes, that is exactly how I felt when we would do events surrounding the book. People would be like, oh my gosh, I love the book. We love this recipe. And I'd be like, oh, I'm so sick of that recipe. But yeah, it's a wonderful process. It's so amazing to finally share it with people. But when it does come out and I kind of like would look at the photos and be like, oh, I feel like my style has changed so much, even though it probably hadn't, but it just, you feel so different by the time it's released.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like, it's such an interesting process in terms of birthing a creative project, because when you're running a business, you get a little bit more like feedback, right? Of like what's happening. But this is like, you're off in a kind of secluded place where nobody gets to see it. And you're doing this for a year. And you go And then in some ways, the process can be somewhat uncomfortable. I mean, maybe you didn't have that sense, but for me, there were some days where I just like couldn't stand to be in my own skin because I just was
Yes.
like, it was this weird, like, I almost thought like, is this just like a past life thing about me being seen? Or like,
Yes.
I couldn't figure out like, what is my problem? Like, it
Yes.
started out like, this is going to be amazing and creative and so fun and like, wow. And then there was just like, especially towards the end, just like, oh my God. And then by the time I was done, I had a writing coach and she was like, this is normal. By the time you hate it and you can't stand it, you're almost ready to be done. And that really nice year where you have all the editing and images so that, you can just push back from it so that you can be excited about it again.
Yes.
Did you feel any of that stuff?
100%. The whole process is incredibly insular. You kind of feel like trapped by it in a way. And I had this moment, it was like the last month or so I had left before I had to hand it in. And I had a wall in my house where I would print out every photo I had taken. So I could just look at it and see if it was cohesive and they all looked right and if I was happy with it. And I was like looking at the wall and my boyfriend's there. And I was like, I really want to rephotograph the whole thing. Like, it was just so wild that I would even think that. It was like 125 photos. I was like, I really need to like take these down and photograph the whole thing again. He was like, you need to sit down and maybe go away for the weekend and think about this. But it's true. Like, you just hit like a saturation point, and that's when you're just beginning kind of like the process of acceptance, I think. As soon as I handed it in and I could go back to online content creation, which is so immediate and like kind of gratifying in that sense, it was such a huge relief. And by the time I had that break and I received the first draft that I could edit, I was like, wow, this is great. I feel so good about what I did. Like, it was just, I needed that little space of time to appreciate it for what it was. It's so crazy.
Yeah, it's such a squeeze.
It is, yes. And like every aspect of your life, it's a big old squeeze. Yeah.
So even though you had this similar sensations, even though you were posting like so often and having so much engagement with your people online.
I was still trying to, yeah. Definitely wasn't posting as often because like the work was just so, with the book, it was like so all consuming. I didn't seek out any like other help with the book, which was like, in retrospect, maybe not the smartest move, because sometimes with cookbooks, people will hire, even if they photograph it themselves, they'll hire like a prop stylist so that you don't have to think about getting the perfect dishes, the perfect napkin for every shot. Like, that person thinks about it. And I thought, like, maybe that would be good. But yeah, like, in retrospect, I'm not really sure how I kept producing online content too. Like, I think if I did it again, I don't know if I would be as good at that. I don't know if I would be.
Will you do it again?
I think so. I have an idea for one. I have an idea for one for sure. And I keep thinking about it and like fiddling with like little recipes that have to do with it. But I just gotta wait for like the right moment where it feels good to like totally like dive in. Like, I'm kind of just like splashing a bit now. I'm just like splashing the water, seeing what it feels like. And it's just putting it on a burner, like maybe later. I think I'll know when the time's right.
And so do you want to tell us about your cookbook for those folks who are like trying to eat more plant-based or really interested in vegan food? What's your favorite part about your cookbook?
So my cookbook, The First Mess, it's very seasonal, I would say. I'm not a big like meat fake out cook person. Like, I really just love things like lentils and like salads and just like a seasonal vegetable made into a beautiful stew or something. Like, that's the kind of the focus. Like, I think all of these naturally plant-based foods are so great in their natural form. They just need a little coaxing, a little seasonal inspiration to be truly amazing. So that's kind of the guiding influence of the book. It's all pretty approachable, but like a little like elevated too. I think my favorite section of the book is probably the soup and stew section. And I think that's like unanimously probably the most popular section. At least when I see people cooking recipes on Instagram and tagging me, it's always like cozy lentil soup or like the weeknight doll or whatever. It's always like those kind of recipes. I think people just love batch cooking too. It makes it so easy to like get through the week when you have something you can turn to. But yeah, I'm into, like, I really love cozy food. Like that's my thing. And I'm so glad we're in the season of it. But that chapter of my book is perfect for it.
Cozy food.
Yes.
Does that have anything to do with the new idea for your book or no?
No, not particularly. Like I think overall my style can be kind of cozy, but I don't know if I could do a whole book around it. I don't know. I like to eat like some raw things and stuff like that too.
So right now, what is inspiring you the most about your business?
Just the idea of growth, and that I honestly am at this space with my business, my online, everything. I have this space where I feel like anything is possible. It's wild. I don't know if it's just the fall season or what it is, but I feel like anything could happen. Like I have this idea for this book. I might like work with a team to make like cooking videos soon. We might, like, we're starting this newsletter. I'm starting this podcast in the fall. Like we're launching in the fall. It's not about food, but again, it's like kind of related. It's like health related, I guess. So it just feels, I don't know, just the potential for growth, the potential to do different things, explore different mediums, but still have that focus point as like good, nourishing food still there. It's like comforting, but exciting also.
I always tend to think of business as a really good path for spiritual growth or just like personal growth in general. I always feel like business will show me my weaknesses constantly until I handle that one and then something else will crop up. It's like a really good reflectionary mirror. Have you found that to be true? And can you give any examples in your life where your business taught you something about yourself that you felt like was either a weakness you had to work through or something you had to improve or get more clear or fearless about?
Definitely, like just the nature of my business taught me to handle criticism so much better. It just like, sometimes I get 98% of feedback from everything I do is so wonderful. But the 2%, like they're usually real humdingers. Like they're just like, you ruined my dinner party with this recipe. Or it'll just be like, we had all our friends over and this was a disaster. Like it would just be things like that. Or, wow, you know, the odd time if you share a certain sentiment on Instagram that might veer from just food. Like if I talk about like politics and environment or something and somebody has, you know, an insight that feels critical to me. And that, like, just having to put myself out there online and my work out there online has taught me to really do more work on like loving myself and nourishing myself with other activities so that when I see that email from whoever who had her dinner party ruined, I can write back to her like, I'm so sorry this happened to you. I would love to like learn more about what happened so I can help you avoid this next time. And like usually, like instead of just being dismissive and like deleting her email or like pretending it didn't happen or being rude to the person, like I'm just much more like, I'm actually more invested in like meeting that person where they are. And I mean, sometimes you just have to cut it off, like somebody's just being a troll. But in a situation where I feel I can help, I'm much more eager to be like, let me step in and let's make this right. I really want to like learn more about your experience so that I can avoid this in my work, but also so that you feel better about relying on my content in the future. Whereas like before I would have just been like, this person doesn't know how to cook. That's the problem. Delete. So yeah, it's different. It's just having the patience to like fill myself up so I can meet any criticism, however small or large, so I can just meet that in a much more productive way.
Yeah, that's a lot of work, isn't it? Like taking care of the parts of yourself first.
Well, sometimes like when it's like, it's just me doing all of this. So it's hard to like even begin to justify that sometimes. And like in the initial phase of building what I was doing, I was like, I don't have time for that. I have to just keep going. But it's increasingly, as I get more followers, more people buying my book, more people looking at my stuff, it's just so much more important to me that I stay centered on that idea of just being able to rise up to whatever issues or whatever people may have for me.
Take us on a like week-long brain dump, just like smatter out all of the different things you do in 1 week since you're doing everything. What are you doing?
Okay, so all week I am posting on Instagram, obviously, engaging with people on Instagram. I answer probably about 100 DMs a day on Instagram. And I will block out like an hour just for me to be on Instagram, and that's it. So there's a boundary. So I do that. All the social media posting, that's important. I will build and test a recipe for every week of the year, ideally. Like sometimes I'll be doing 2 or 3 recipes in a week, and I'll just schedule them out for later on. On any given week, I'm probably working on some kind of sponsored content with a partner that I've linked up with. Usually, like, obviously, it's always a brand that I love and use. So on any given week, I'm building some piece of content for them and then submitting it and making any adjustments that I have to. I'm also just like playing in the kitchen every week. Like, I'm just like, well, I have all this cabbage. Like, let's see what that's like if I saute it with apples and beets and do this thing. And then maybe I'll make some notes, and then maybe I'll forget about it, but the notes will be there and I can come back to it. And yeah, I'm just like also living my life, like anything that's like kind of my food or health or well-being kind of life, I will like share within reason on my Instagram stories. Sometimes there's like a structure there throughout the week. Like, I'm going to do this cooking demo on Instagram stories on this day. And most days it's just like, look how cute my dog is. Oh my gosh. Like, it's very, but I don't know, that's basically a week, like just working on recipes, taking the photo. I like to do it in the moment. I know a lot of people will develop a bunch of recipes and then they'll photograph them. Like, they'll do a singular task. I don't work that way. I like to keep doing a different thing. So I'm always kind of shaking it up. But yeah, it's a typical week, I guess.
And how do you find sponsors? Do they reach out to you? You reach out to them? You say like, ooh, I like this thing. I'm gonna, and is that your primary source of income?
No, it isn't. But I will sometimes reach out to them. I also have an agency that represents me. So sometimes they're working with a brand more directly and they have a contact. When they get something going, if I say like, hey, I love this brand's kombucha, can we try something? But yeah, like it changes every time. Like sometimes they're working on something, so they'll reach out to me, or I'll tag them on Instagram and then they'll just send me a DM. Like, we'd love to work together. But yeah, it kind of changes a bit every time. And every brand kind of seems to want something different out of the partnership, which is kind of exciting. I like that. I like that it's different every time. But yeah, I feel like I learn something new about it every time. I've been doing it for a bit, but yeah, I enjoy it for them. Like, I can say I enjoy it 100%. Like, I know sometimes people have a weird thing about sponsored content and seeing it on Instagram. Sometimes from people, it's not 100% clear what is a paid collaboration and what isn't. But I always try to be super transparent, and I enjoy the process. Like, it can be inspirational. You start with a certain product and they want you to make a recipe with this vibe, and it forces you to think differently sometimes. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm working on something sponsored almost every week now. So.
Well, you have to make money. I mean,
yes,
you are, posting every week for the last like 10 years. And if you don't have a source of income, like, how are you going to buy you grow your vegetables, but
I still buy stuff. I still
buy some stuff.
Yeah.
To like survive in this world. So for the listeners out there who are like, wow, that sounds really cool. Like, I could totally, like, there's something that I am so into. I could do stuff every week for 10 years because I love it so much. How do you make money from it?
So, like, I built up my website traffic, but just via consistent posting and some good press. I built up my website traffic to a point where I felt okay running ads on it. That is a significant portion of my income. And it's largely inactive because I've built such an archive, so I don't have to worry about that. I know that X amount of income will come every month, and that is reassuring and wonderful. And then my book, obviously, like, that was a good income source. And then the sponsorship is like great. It does pay well. They do kind of base how much you'll make based on like the engagement of your posts increasingly. It's not so much based on like how many followers you have all the time. It can be based on just like, how many comments and likes are you getting? Where is your audience focused? Like, it used to just be, you have X amount of followers, you get this much money. Now it's different. Like, brands are like just asking how many times a post was saved. Like, that's a contributing factor now. Or they want somebody who has kind of a personal story that they would like to weave their brand into naturally. And that's more important to them than any sort of number. So I like, a lot of people ask me via DM on Instagram all the time, like, how can I get my audience up? I want to work with sponsors, etc. I don't think you have to necessarily get a ton of followers. You just have to like have a really great community that you love communicating with, because you've built that level of trust. And it's not to say that like you do that just to get sponsors and have a brand like use you, but it's just if you love the product, if you love working with it, you want your people who follow and are part of your journey online to know. So
your last Instagram post.
Which one was that?
The fridge.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Is that your fridge?
It is my fridge, yeah.
Nice, yummy.
I mean, I gussied it up a bit, but it is pretty like tidy. Like my dad owned a small grocery store when I was a child, well, up until I was in my 20s. So one of my jobs was always to front face everything on the shelf. So I do that in my fridge. Like I make the beverage label faces out. I can see everything. Like I don't know. I can work on my stuff more effectively if I know that everything in there is organized and ready for me. So, yeah.
Cool. Okay. And then one other question I had about sponsorships was, have you ever turned down a sponsorship because you're just like, this?
A bunch of times. Yeah. A lot of times. Yeah.
Yeah. This doesn't fit with me or.
Yeah. And sometimes for a lot of money too. I'm just
turkey, soy, something that's just not your deal.
Yeah, like something that's like hyper processed. Like I had one kind of recently where I was just like, oh, this is so much money. This would be amazing. But it just was not. It was a product where like in a situation where I'm like totally cutting loose and maybe I'm on vacation, I would eat. But outside of that, I don't think I would. I was like, I don't think I can like soundly recommend this to people who follow me. Like it just doesn't fit. Yeah, it's happened a bunch of times. Like I would say it happens, I don't know, every other month or so I get approached by a brand. I'm just like, I don't think so. Or even like an appliance company, like a small countertop appliance company approached me. And like, it was something I would use, but it was like it didn't look nice. I was like, I can't, it doesn't look good. I can't take a photo of this thing. But it's like varying reasons sometimes. But yeah, it's just sometimes it doesn't fit. That's all.
Okay. And last question, are there any words of wisdom that you could offer, whether it's like people wanting to start their own business or people who have a business or people who are on social media or just any sort of human wisdom or advice that arises?
Especially with what I do, definitely just focus on your own thing. Like for me, when I start to go astray and I lose my creative energy, which is everything, I need that. What sucks that down is like spending too much time online looking at what everyone else is doing. Like that, to a degree, that can be inspiring and keep you in the know on food trends or something like that, or whatever trends are in your industry. But for me, like just really focusing on what lights me up, what's working for me, what I personally know that like my audience will connect with, that's important. I know it's important to like engage on social with other accounts and things like that. But for my energy, the way I make things, I have to cut it off and just say like, only gonna look at a book and like a few cookbooks and like get inspiration that way. But other than that, I'm just gonna go inward and focus on what I'm doing.
I love that advice. That is such excellent advice.
Oh, good.
Yeah, the best things that we've ever done would be things that were just felt right in the moment that no one else would ever think about doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I imagine with your industry that really applies because like sometimes like when I first started, a couple times I posted about the flower elixirs and like people would DM me in all caps, like, what are these? Like, why do you take these?
Yeah.
What is the deal with flower elixirs? And I'm like, and like when I would get these messages, I'm like, it's crazy that somebody thought to do this. And it's even more amazing that like someone like you is throwing like your life behind making this a business. But that's because like you focused on how beneficial and awesome it was in your life. You made it this beautiful thing. Like, I think sometimes if you like listen to that kind of tone where people are like, what even is that? It's just like, okay, that's not helpful.
That's so funny. Caps.
All caps. Yeah. Like, what even are these? What are these like droppers you keep putting in your coffee? I'm like, okay, let me direct you to the LOTUSWEI website.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So just on that note, what have you experienced? Have Have you noticed anything from working with flower essences?
100%.
You have a garden, so you get the magic of flowers probably just
For sure.
standing around them. But what have you noticed?
I take the wild abundance one a lot, and I tend to be, I'm a bit of a worrier. I'm a bit of a even though I can't control the past or the future, sometimes I do spend a lot of time thinking about those things, which is not productive in a life sense, not in a business sense, not in any sense, really. Taking wild abundance, maintaining the 5 drops 5 times a day, every day, definitely increases that feeling of everything's fine. It's very much if a problem arises, it's this feeling of can I do anything about this? Yes. Awesome. If I can't do anything about it, awesome. I'll leave it. It's definitely strengthened that sense of everything's fine. Just stay in the now, focus on what you can do right now to abate this or ignore it entirely. That's when I get away from taking it, that opposite feeling of just what am I going to do about this thing 26 days from now that somebody else totally has control over? That starts to seep in for me. And I mean, a few other factors, I might skip meditation or something like that. But yeah, my work, wild abundance is a big part of my life now. I really love it. So,
aww. Have you tried incorporating it into food too?
Yeah. So I will usually put it in, I do this beautiful, blended coffee with cacao and MCT oil and spices. And then the wild abundance gets dropped in. Or I'll do before dinner, we have a non-alcohol cocktail of a little bit of beet ginger juice, little grapefruit juice, little fizzy water. We stir in a bit of that. I'll garnish it with a rose of Sharon from my tree that's blooming so beautifully right now. I can put it in a nice little coupe, a champagne, this vintage champagne coupe, and we just drop it in. It feels so fancy to put it in at the end. But yeah, mostly into drinks. I would say I haven't really put it into food yet. But yeah, always in drinks. We're always dropping and dosing. And yeah.
That's so good. Do you have your recipe on your site anywhere for the coffee cacao drink?
No, but I can email it to you and take a nice photo of it for you if you want. No problem.
Okay, then we can add that. So for the listeners who are interested in that yummy drink, we can add that to the blog post.
Perfect.
Awesome. Always looking for simple ways to just, weave it into life and make it decadent.
Yeah, and it is so easy with that little dropper. Just I have the tray on my kitchen. I'm just I'll add this. It makes it so easy and it adds so much.
It's weird, right?
It's
weird that it works, isn't it?
It's wild how much it works. It really is wild. And I see it with my dog too, taking the self-heal. Her digestion is getting better and better. And it's not because of it. She's not on any meds. She hasn't been on any for a while. She's just been on LOTUSWEI self-heal. So it's amazing to me. I was really I bought them and I was these are nice. They taste like honey. That's good. But they really add a lot. I notice when I don't take them. And I feel actually my partner notices when I don't take them too. So you seem a little edgy.
Okay, so when you're writing your second book,
yes,
inspired action, game changer, and then when you get to the freak out point, then he can say,
yeah,
okay, time to sit down and do this.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. Any last anything you want to offer? Anything coming into your mind?
I can't think of anything particularly. I'm just really happy to be here. It was such a nice interview. It was so great talking to you.
So nice to talk to you. All right. And what are you picking in your garden today? Anything?
Definitely some kale. I have so much kale. It's unbelievable. I cut the last of my cauliflower and cabbage the other day. It's all the cruciferous good stuff. My Brussels sprouts are still kind of maturing a little bit. But yeah, all of that and hardy herbs. And I have 5 little overripe tomatoes left. So yeah, fall is happening. It's here. So
fall is happening. So to look for whatever those items are and how she'll incorporate them into next week's recipes.
Yes.
Go to the very first mess, thefirstmess.com, and also visit on Instagram where you can see beautiful images. Thanks so much for being with us, Laura.
Thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you so much for listening to The Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at LOTUSWEI.com.